sometimes people will say, you're a social butterfly. I'm like, what?
Butterfly?
Butterfly? More like ninja. Come on. I'm like working the room with, no way am I a social butterfly. I laugh at that because I'm like, no, I'm not fluttering around. I have purpose.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a history of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. In this episode, I got to speak with Lindsay Dougherty. Lindsay is the business agent for Local 399. That's the Teamsters union for motion pictures. And if you think that's a male-dominated union, you are right. And Lindsay doesn't care. She is a badass, and she is there to make a difference. Here, have a listen. What is your job?
I am a business agent for Teamsters Local 399, and I'm also an organizer there as well. So I serve as two roles.
Okay, what does that mean to be a business agent?
So basically, the union's made up of workers, different classifications within the motion picture industry, and it's internationally as well, but we're specific, our local, to motion picture only. So we're like a craft local. So as a business agent, I represent the members that are within that union in the industry as far as like contract enforcement goes, negotiating contracts, or just representing them with the employer, which is all of the major studios in the area.
So 399 is the Teamsters?
Yeah, yes.
And that's drivers, for people who don't know.
Drivers, casting directors, location managers, animal trainers and wranglers, mechanics, dispatchers, servicemen. Then we have smaller contracts that are like Omega, which is a prop house, ABC TV, which is like drivers that operate the wall trailers that move Jimmy Kimmel, stuff like that. It's all over the area in Los Angeles County.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, is that what you always wanted to do?
Not always. I'm from Detroit originally, and my father's a Teamster, so I'm a second generation Teamster. And he worked in the warehouse, and so he was a shop steward, and then he worked his way up as a business agent, and now he's the secretary treasurer of his local. But when I lived in Detroit, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I went to college. I studied in communications, but I was around film when I was young because my dad would be the transportation captain on film sets. So when I was 12 years old, I went on my first film set, and I, got to meet Claire Danes, and it was during that time, of like my so-called life. So
yes.
I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing, and I didn't.
Like, this is a job?
Yeah, and so I didn't know what I wanted to do during that time because I was like thinking about maybe going into acting. And so I actually, for college, I was a theater major and a communications major. So I was a double major. And then after a while, I was like, the theater stuff is not for me. I can talk all day long and do public speaking and stuff like that, but acting, it just wasn't my cup of tea. So
I had the exact same experience in theater school, by the way.
It's very demanding, and you have to be very passionate and motivated to
driven.
Excel. Yeah, exactly. And that it wasn't my passion, and I knew it. So I continued on with communications, but then I figured, I had been around movie sets at that point up until I was 21, which was the first time I ever actually worked on a movie set other than being an extra as a kid. Mm-hmm. But I was the transportation dispatcher on The Island, which is a Michael Bay film, so it was incredibly difficult for my first film. Yeah. And so it was great. It was such a great experience. It was, working in the motion picture industry, it's demanding and it's crazy. You never know what's happening, and I loved it. Like, I loved that chaos and getting things done and helping people. So I had decided, like, this is what I'm going to do. At 21, I had to finish college still because I was still, like, working. Every time a movie would come to Detroit, I'd work as a transportation dispatcher. And then, I'd have to quit school for a little bit, go back to school. So then...
now, was that when Detroit had the incentive, so everyone went to Detroit for a few years? Before that?
Yeah, because the city of Detroit has declined dramatically in the last, 40 years. And so a lot of films would go there because they had a lot of freedom to do what they wanted to do, especially someone like Michael Bay. He's been there, I think, 4 times now because you can shut down the city do explosives and no one really cares. It's really simple.
It's a big set.
Yeah, it's huge. They build sets in the middle of the city. It's incredible. But that's, so there were films that would go to Detroit. So that was way before the incentive, actually. And so then...
now, what did you do as a dispatcher? What does that mean?
So I would have to break down the call sheets for drivers because it's different for every, I worked on larger films, so I had a lot of more drivers, like 60 drivers, 50 drivers. So with each driver comes like the federal DOT paperwork that they have to do. So you're dealing with federal law, and then, dispatching them to do whatever for off production, on production. So special effects, construction, then what's happening during the time that you're filming, you're, helping the captain and coordinator. So I basically worked hand in hand with the transportation coordinator. I did the budgeting for the films for the transportation department. So you're dealing with a lot of personalities as far as the drivers go, and then with all of the departments, because you're basically servicing all the departments. Nothing can get, transportation is the first one in and the last one out. So there's a lot happening to make everything else happen in order to start filming. So my position as a dispatcher wasn't really, it wasn't really useful in television and smaller films. So low budget films, it's a specialty position. So I worked on larger budgeted films like Transformers, Indiana Jones, Star Trek, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's a lot of information coming in. Yeah,
that's quite an entree.
Yeah, so you have to know where everything's going, when it's going, and it's all logistics, really.
Yeah.
But logistics on a film set, which everyone working in the film industry is completely different than any other industry out there.
But it all has to happen right now. It's
right.
Very expensive. A lot of moving parts.
Yes.
A lot of pressure.
Oh yeah, yeah. Which is great experience because at some points you're working on a film and you're working 3 months straight without a day off. I've done that too, and you don't have time to. You just do it.
Yeah.
You do what it takes, and so it's really a good training experience.
To do anything.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do anything now.
Pretty much. That's how I felt after a couple films like Transformers 4. After working on a film like that, I knew this is not the end. There's so much more out there. I can do more things.
These skills transfer.
Yeah. So when I was in Detroit working as a transportation dispatcher, being around my father and other Teamster officials and other Teamsters, and just being around it in my entire life, I knew that I actually wanted to work for the Teamsters before I moved out here. Mm-hmm. So I moved out here when I was 23, and kind of worked my way up, and 10 years later, less than 7 years, I became a business agent. So,
okay, now tell us about the business agent. What does that mean, and what does that look like? And is it separate from the job, or do you do it while you're on the job?
So, as a business agent, I don't work on films any longer.
Okay.
The last, I worked on Transformers 4, and then on to The Gambler, and I had to. You stop working in the industry, but you're in it in a different way. Whereas now, I know about the projects before they happen, and I have to negotiate the contracts with producers or labor relations attorneys, or just entertainment attorneys. So I have to, do that as far as, getting the job going. And then once the job's going, I get to go visit the members and interact with them and then represent them. If they have a problem, they call us. So we're kind of like a social worker in a sense that everything that I'm dealing with is really negative most of the time and I try not to look at it like it's negative.
You're problem solving.
Exactly. And that's all it is. It's consistently problem solving. So it's not, you don't get the camaraderie of working on a film set, but I have a different way of, I have other business agents from other locals that I'm friends with now, and it's just this whole other political world. Whereas working on a film set, you're working on that film and that's it. And you're in the film bubble and that's your world. But now it's my world is complete. I'm dealing with all sorts of different studios, producers, the labor relations people. And then I'm also dealing with the politics within the Teamsters. And then, we had to lobby hard for the film incentive that came, the AB 1839, So that was a huge thing too, is we had to really push that, and Amy Lemish and the Film Commission were involved in that too. So it's so these are things that I had no idea about before I started being
right.
It was,
because how would you know?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really interesting now. It's like a bigger world. Like there's a bigger picture out of all of it. So that's kind of what I have to deal with, different things with politics, which you deal with the politics on a film, with the director, the producer, but now it's like,
it's the whole industry.
The whole industry.
Now you see what's going on everywhere.
Yeah.
So if someone's going to do a film and they think we're going to be union, I need to make a Teamster deal, you're the person they call?
Yes. Yeah. My boss used to do it. He's the principal officer, and now I have taken over, and I have to sign the contracts and negotiate wages, which is a huge deal because you're dealing with the livelihood of your members, and I don't want to screw anything up because I don't want somebody. Not only do I not want them to be angry at me, but I don't want to ruin the wages that they should have gotten, or so I have to pay attention to what I'm doing.
Well, it's their real lives.
It is. Yeah.
How many of you are there in LA? Are you the only one with this job?
As far as the Teamsters go, yes. Yeah.
So are you top dog at the Teamsters?
No. No, there's a hierarchy. There's an executive board, and then there's staff, which I'm a business agent. So I have to deal with my principal officer on a daily basis as far as like the deals I'm making. But no, like right now, the only other person at the local that knows how to do what I'm doing is my principal officer. So it's a good thing and a bad thing, but it's eventually someone else will learn how to do it. But right now, it's like this is what I've taken on, and I enjoy it. It's so different than anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
But it's very it's a lot, and then it's also a lot of conflict. So it's not like on production when someone needs something, you take care of it right then and there. It's like this may take months. So that was the one thing I had to get used to, is because production happens quickly.
Yeah, expecting to be resolved.
Yeah, and corporate,
corporate time is different.
Yeah, it's very different. But now I've gotten used to that too, and I have to explain to people this is why it takes forever.
Yeah. Okay, now I gotta ask, because the perception of the Teamsters is it's a very male business.
Yeah.
How has that been for you, being a woman coming up in it?
Well, I'm very lucky in the sense that I'm a second generation Teamster from Detroit. So Detroit is a very different city than Los Angeles, California.
I think that just gives you cred.
Yeah, a little bit, because it's a union town. It's where Jimmy Hoffa Sr. is from, and that's where he became the leader of the International, which is it's a whole different thing in itself. But yeah, the Teamsters are predominantly male in a sense of like, there's drivers positions that dominate the union, which there's not a lot of female drivers.
Yeah.
We have like the most of our members are casting directors and animal trainers and location managers, and that like there's more female within those job classifications. Sure. But yeah, when I go to meetings because there's a hierarchy within the Teamsters too, that all those politics that I deal with as well, like our joint council. And then above the joint council is the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, which is currently the general president is Jim Hoffa Jr. So
and it's a brotherhood.
It is, yeah. And they've even tried to change in certain resolutions throughout the years to make it a brotherhood and sisterhood.
How's that catching on?
It didn't. It got shot down, and I think not just by males but some females, because I've talked about it with some females, and they're just like, just leave it how it is. It's not a big deal. But yeah, when I go to these meetings, I'm one of the few business agents that's a female. There's just not a lot, and obviously it'll change because we're gonna make it change. But and it's not just the Teamsters too, like the industry itself.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. And so even on a film set, there's not many female leads as far as department heads. But then when you deal with the studios with labor relations, it's really funny because a lot of them are female.
Yeah.
And when you look at if you're sitting in a room with representatives from all of the studios, more than half are female.
Yeah, for sure. So how has that been, especially as a young woman, being in the room, having to negotiate and talk about all these issues? did you feel like you were heard? Like, did you have to figure out how to communicate in that room?
Oh yeah. I mean, I make myself heard. Like,
how?
Because I don't have any problem holding back my opinion. Because it's what I believe in, and what I believe in, it was my passion with the Teamsters and with this industry. So
tell me about that. What is that belief?
I believe that, I'm a huge advocate for justice and for, fairness. And I think there's a lot of things that are lacking that, and especially when I have to represent my members, it's usually they're not being treated fairly. So to me, it's like there's got to be a level playing field and some balance, and not so much of the, 99% of people are in the middle class or poverty, and that to me is like, it's got to change. And so I deal with it in every aspect of my life. And so when my dad first told me about, like, when I started doing this job, he said, "Welcome to the fight." And it really is a fight. Like, to me, it's a full contact sport. I'm not messing around. So when I'm in a room of men and they want to shut me down, there's no way. It's not going to happen. I mean, it's just, at this point now, it hasn't, because they know better. So there's certain people that I meet and they look at me like, oh, I'm 33 years old, and that also is a huge thing too.
Here comes the young woman. What does she know?
And it's not even just young women, it's just young person as well. And then, I've had many instances where they're like, oh, they find out who my dad is, and I've had one man say, "Why didn't you tell me who your dad was?" What does that have to do with anything? I'm telling you my opinion, and you're not listening to me because you think that you can't take me seriously. But now that you know who my dad is, you're going to take me seriously.
But you belong to an important man.
Oh,
that's important.
Exactly. Or I get like, when I'm at a function, they're like, "Whose wife are you?" It's like, oh, and then I lay into them. I have to, and I do it.
What do you say then?
Oh, I don't know what I said in the exact moment, but I diplomatically say what I need to say, and with force. So in a joking and loving way too, because I don't want to be like, this huge masculine energy coming in the room and listen to me because I'm the only female and you need to listen.
Yeah.
It's not
you can't
like that
alienate
either.
everybody. You still have to do your job.
Yeah, and I don't want to be like, because I get the, you're a bitch, or like you're very passionate about what you say. Yeah, I'm passionate, but don't disregard my point. Like, there's an actual point to what I'm saying. It's not just about passion. So I try to do it in a loving way of, letting them know that what they said was not correct. And they probably should never say it ever again, especially to me.
They learned their lesson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I gotta talk about these tattoos on your arms because they're amazing. I'm gonna put a picture on the website, but explain this.
So this portrait is of James R. Hoffa, which is, the Jimmy Hoffa, the Hoffa that, Danny DeVito made the film of. And this is like the horse heads, and this is like the Greyhound bus, which there are previous strikes that happened throughout the years within the Teamsters. And then these are picket signs like IBT on strike. These are Teamsters striking. And then this is actually Jimmy Hoffa's fist. You can't really tell. It's just kind of like,
coming out through the crowd.
Yeah, and he's like banging his fist on corporate pigs with like a wheelbarrow filled with money. And then, there's like a police officer, a SWAT police officer, and then there's a car being blown up, which is kind of like, that nowadays doesn't happen anymore, because
blowing up the cars, that's frowned upon.
Yeah, we have like a grievance and arbitration procedure now that's set in place, so there's not many strikes happening nowadays. I mean, it happens all the time, but not like this. I mean, This is like early 1900s when workers were really trying to fight for their union and for fair wages and stuff like that.
Can I see the inside?
Yeah.
That's passionate.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. The Teamsters really love this tattoo of mine.
Oh, I would think that opens a lot of doors for you.
It's funny because my dad, like, even since day one of getting these tattoos, he hated them. And
why?
Because I grew up in the Midwest. It wasn't really.
Not everyone has sleeves tattoos.
Yeah, it wasn't really a traditional Irish thing to do. But now it's like once I got the Teamster Strike on my arm, and he loved it, and then he's like, look at her arm, and so now it's like you can't forget what I look like.
That's
once
legit.
you see me, yeah. So if I'm covered up, though, people don't recognize me. It's hilarious. So I have to cover up.
As soon as you take your coat off, oh yeah, her.
Right. So that's a nice thing. They remember who I am. But
yeah. So do you think you'll be with the Teamsters forever?
Yeah, I do. I want to, at least.
Yeah.
So I hope they have me that long. But yeah, that's the ultimate passion of mine, and just the ultimate goals of where I'm progressing as a person and as a union person.
Where do you think you're headed?
Well, there's the international, like at some point there's an international executive board, and there's only one female on it out of like about 40. So
wow,
that right there, like
there's
that's
a spot for you.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there should be more spots. So that's the ultimate goal. I think it's my responsibility to do that as a Teamster and as like a union woman within the country, not just Hollywood.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What's the feeling inside the Teamsters as far as women and gender equity, things like that? Is it a thing?
It's like, we have the Human Rights Commission within the Teamsters, and we have started diversity programs. But the thing, the thing about it too is we're not the employer, so the Teamsters aren't doing the hiring. And so like for us, it's like if we don't control the hiring, how can we bring in more female? But I think it's definitely being talked about, and I talk about it openly with international vice presidents, and I express my opinion of the matter of like there needs to be more, and I think eventually like we're going into that direction. There's more female principal officers that I see throughout the country, and there's very few of us, so we always have that conversation of like, you inspire me, or it's so nice to meet you, because we're in a room filled with men. And not many men really can understand that, so they're not really, I think, noticing that's a conversation we should be having.
Are they even thinking about it?
I don't know. I think some are, because there's some that are very they're feminists. And I have a lot of mentors and support within the Teamsters, and they're always encouraging me and supporting me, and it's amazing. So I know it's there, and these are people that are on the general executive board, and they see me out all the time, and I talk to them, and I have no problem talking to them. So they have they fully support what I'm doing and want me to excel. So it's really nice to have that, because I haven't really had much of anyone say anything negative to me as far as my goals and aspirations go.
Wow. So that was going to be my next question of, have you had a mentor? And you just said you had several.
I do.
Which I'm finding unusual amongst women in this business.
Oh,
so
yeah.
What does that look like?
It's like my father, number one. And then when I first moved out here, I had my best friend is from Detroit as well. She moved out here a year before I did. And she gave my resume to somebody that she was working with. She was working on The Curious Case of Benjamin Buttons.
Oh.
So she meets this guy that he is a transportation captain on it, and she says, you need to hire her. Like, she lives in Michigan right now, but she's going to move to California. You need to hire her. And he ended up hiring me on Indiana Jones, and that was the first film here that I worked on as transportation, because when I first came here, I had to work in accounting and work at Starbucks and do the whole struggling thing in LA. But he kept me around for a couple years and taught me everything that I needed to know as far as the transportation ins and outs. So
it's great.
He his name is Max, and he is still very much in my life. I call him my California dad. And then just other people within the industry now, and even as a business agent here and meeting other Teamsters, I can pick up the phone and call so many people, and it's amazing. And it's some people, if you're a second generation Teamster, it's nepotism and it got handed to you, but it certainly didn't get handed to me here, because I had, this is a different arena, and Hollywood is completely different than where I'm from. So I do. And most of them, and I was thinking about this today, because most of my mentors are men. And there's, of course I have my mother who's extremely strong, and she's like definitely someone I look for answers, and I talk to about certain things, but it's all men, and they're all very supportive still.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
It is.
Now, are you mentoring anyone?
Yes. Yeah, I have. I have people in my life that, some are younger, some are older even. And, cause that's how it is supposed to be. We're supposed to help one another, and you have to give back, you have to. And it's not like I decided to be a mentor. It's just that I like people, and I like talking to them, and knowing what they want to do. I was on the phone with my friend for 3 hours last night. He's working on Transformers right now too, but that's someone that he calls me anytime he needs, and yeah, especially for women, I would like to be mentoring them, because they're the generation, like I'm young, but the generations behind me, it's interesting to think that there's people interested in the labor movement, which there's not. They don't teach you it in school, so that's kind of like the thing I'd like to do.
Now, what about the labor movement? Explain that.
So, the labor movement is about making it, just having a fair share, having the middle class, just buying a home, just being able to provide for your children and maybe send them to college one day. Just that, to me, the labor movement is just having that life of just having the freedom to just have a nice, happy life. Yeah. And the labor movement is huge. It works hand in hand with the civil rights movement. It also, we deal with a lot of politics because we have to. Because if there is no labor movement, there is no middle class, and everyone's just going to be living in poverty while the rich get richer. And we've already seen that, and that's always a topic of discussion that you hear about now. And you have for this has been a conversation that everyone has had forever, for centuries at this point, of the differences of being rich and being poor. But the labor movement started based on it not being fair for people, workers in the 1700s that were fighting for certain things, like the 8-hour day that we have, and all of the labor laws. The NLRB, the NLRA, which is the National Labor Relations Act, was created based on workers fighting for just to be treated with respect and to be treated with fairness. So the labor movement has grown on something like that, and now it's times are different. It's 2016, and we don't have to fight for the 8-hour day and for a break or at lunchtime. We don't have to fight for certain things like that, but there are people out there that are still fighting for that. And a lot of industries out there that, for us, the motion picture industry is 90% organized. So we're not dealing with, we're dealing with really good companies as far as I'm concerned, because we don't have to fight with certain things like that. But there's issues, that every industry has. Not everyone knows about the labor movement and what it has done for them, that's the discussion I think that needs to continuously happen, because we don't learn that in school. You're not learning about economics and the labor movement. You're not learning about, Martin Luther King is probably the only person that we're learning about, but there's people still today, like Congressman John Lewis, he's the one that just did a sit down about gun control.
Yes.
And he actually marched with Martin Luther King, and I got to meet him, and I didn't know who he was. And so there's things like that that's just mind-blowing that, hopefully we continue to teach other generations so they understand why am I fighting this fight? Because it's never ending. It's forever, because there's always going to be unfairness and injustices.
Well, you can see it. Do you see a lot, do you have much visibility to non-union productions that are going on and what the work conditions are there?
Yeah.
And is it a stark difference?
Yeah. I have to deal with that every day, actually. I'm the one that decides whether or not I'm going to try to organize a low-budget film, if I'm going to throw up a picket line or strike them, and so...
Oh, tell me more about that.
It's all about money, and how much money how much a production company has, because we're not as a union, we're not in the business of trying to break companies. That's not, we're just making sure that our members are getting, not just our members, but workers in general, that are just getting like benefits and fair wages, and they're not being taken advantage of. So some of those productions, those low budget non-union productions, they do, the film industry, everyone knows you're working 12 to 18, sometimes 20 hours a day. I did that, but I was getting overtime, and I was getting, reimbursed for my services of like what I did for that job.
Yeah.
And so in those senses, in those cases, they're not getting the breaks, they're not getting the overtime,
the meal penalties,
yes,
the golden time.
all
But
that.
do you think that makes up for it? Like if you have someone who's working 20 hours and then they have a 4-hour turnaround and they're sleeping in their car, and then sure, the next day they're still at double time or golden time for the next day because they didn't have enough turnaround.
Yeah.
But is that still okay?
No, because it's a safety issue.
Right.
I mean, I've been on films where people have gotten really badly hurt because of that. And to me, there's issues. Like, there's issues within the production, and it's a management issue, whether it's the producer or the director. And for me, like, I know the differences of why are we shooting this long? Why are we working this long? It's poor planning. And so
it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't. And, there's a lot of people that have been fighting about this, especially with Sarah Jones and what happened to her. And, ultimately dying for her job, and because of unsafe conditions. And like, we're one of the few industries that continuously work like this on a daily basis. And for drivers, like, it's not okay. It's actually against the law. It's federal law. So for someone to like go driving after they only had 4 hours off, like, no way. I mean, and that's like with you, when you have someone that's at the department head, they have to have control at some point, and they, like the transportation coordinator will tell the producer, you need to stop filming, or this isn't going to happen. They have to have turnaround. So it's never okay in my eyes, because the safety, takes the back seat of it. Then it's all about the art, and the art is beautiful, and we all love it.
But it's movies. It's not curing cancer.
Yes, it's not brain
on.
surgery. That's what I would always say. Is like, this is not brain surgery.
Right.
None of this is life or death.
It shouldn't be life or death.
But it's different nowadays. The economy is different, and the entertainment industry is different. So we're all working more hours,
and there's so much money in it. That's what makes it so urgent and important.
Right.
But I gotta think, if you're paying people the kind of overtime that you need to, if you're running those days, you could probably shoot more days.
Yeah.
With the same money.
Oh yes. It's, again, more planning,
Yeah.
And it's nice when you work with a producer that is really experienced and intelligent and caring and care about the crew. And that, that's sometimes hard to find.
Yeah, it can be done. Like Clint Eastwood, doesn't he shoot 8 or 10 hour
Done.
days consistently?
They're working 12 hours and they're done.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, he doesn't have to take 20 takes to get one shot. He knows what he's doing. He's a pro. But he also cares about his crew. I mean, that's like, to me, if I would work with a director, it would be hard for me to respect them as a person and their art when, everyone's suffering immensely. And it's, if you're working on a crazy film that takes up 6 months of your life, like, no one's complaining about the money and complaining about, having to do all of it, because everyone's a worker bee and they're doing what they need to do. But it's like, it's just not, it's not fair. It's just not okay to anybody. So.
Do you have any stories of like crazy things that happen on set?
Oh, crazy things that happen on set.
Like there's this old story. There was either a PA or a driver in New York who was in traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge, and the director was screaming at him like, "You gotta get me," as if the driver could do anything about the traffic on the bridge, and finally got out of the car and threw the keys in the water and walked away. Like that, for example.
Like that, yeah. I mean, like, that kind of stuff happens all the time. I mean, in transportation, it's like, you really don't want to mess with transportation. They're the ones that are parking your trailer, and, especially if you're, like, I've had so many different instances, because I always had to work with off production. So I would have to move stuff for special effects, construction, grip, and electric. and that was like those departments are all male dominant.
Yeah.
And so I would constantly, I can't think of one particular instance, but it would be where there was a lot of anger and a lot of like from me to them, and vice versa. But then it would stop them. That was the amazing part. Is like then all the Teamsters would get together, or even the producer, and would say, "This is not okay. You can't do this," and then just stop someone in their tracks, and they would never do it again. I mean, but there's not like one particular instance.
It's got to be tough.
Oh yeah, it gets exhausting. Even now with my new job, it's like trying to keep that balance of like not being completely like I don't want to be angry. And it's really difficult when you're dealing with a lot of different people that are just, trying to put you down for like whatever reason.
You're in the fight.
I'm in the fight, yeah. So that's why I'm trying not to.
How do you do that, to be in the fight every day and not have it get to you?
Well, experience, which I'm getting. I've had this job for like 3 years now. Definitely taking care of myself, like mind and body. That's like a huge focus of mine is my health, because if I'm healthy and like have a sound mind, like no one's gonna affect me that much.
There's a lot coming at you.
Oh yeah. So it's I've had to actually change the way I've lived in the last 3 years. My life is completely different as far as like where I'm at now and where I was 3 years ago working on a film. Like,
what does it look like?
What does it look like?
Yeah.
Like, it almost feels like a lifetime ago, because when I worked on a film set, it's like, wearing jeans and a band t-shirt and just like talking to people and not really thinking about where it was going or like my intention. Now I have to speak with politicians with motive and an intention of like, where is it? Why am I speaking to this person? It's almost kind of crazy now for me, because I love politics so much and I didn't realize it before. But you have to go through the shaking of the hands, talking to somebody, and at first it's like very surface and it's kind of fake, but I have to do that. I have to dress differently now. I've had to change my entire wardrobe, which was fun for me anyway, but I had to do that.
That's not all bad.
No. And then, just speaking with people, I feel like I'm speaking with adults. Not that I wasn't on a film set, but it's like, I have to be careful what I say and what I do, and because it's affecting other people's lives. Mm-hmm. So that's like the huge thing, is the way I carry myself is a little bit differently. I'm not as, I guess, rambunctious.
How'd you learn how to do that?
I think, I don't know, it's like this subconscious thing too, almost, with my dad, like seeing my dad in this arena, because he's been in it for 40 years. So it's just talking to people, and I love talking to people. I'll talk to people all day long. So to me, doesn't matter, even if it's kind of like, how's the weather? The small talk of that you have to get through to get to somebody, to actually know about them and learn about how they operate. Mm-hmm. And so it matters. It does, and it's not like with even as like when you're dealing with politicians and you like I said, you have to have motive. But I also care about people, so it's like it is second nature for me, which is. It also blows my mind sometimes that the things that I'm doing and what I'm saying, because it's like I grew up in a matter of 3 years. Not that I was immature when I was 30. It's just it's just a whole different ball game.
Are you ever like giggling inside your head, like, oh my God, look where I am, look what I'm doing?
Yeah, we have a convention to elect the general executive board for the international, and it's every 5 years, and they asked me to be a reader. So I had to read the proposed amendments to the Constitution and resolutions in front of 5,000 Teamsters across the country. And I had to do it 4 days in a row, like every day. And sometimes I was up at the podium for like 20 minutes. And it was, at first, like building up to it, I was so nervous, and not like, it was a healthy anxiety. It wasn't like
It's pretty normal to get nervous.
Yeah. So it was, I was very concerned about my wardrobe because I was going to be on the Jumbotron and like on camera. So that was like, to me, because I think women, we should be concerned about our wardrobe because, we get a lot of flack. It's amazing to me. But, so I did this, and by the fourth day, there was no nervousness. There was nothing. I wanted more of it, actually. Like, to me, it was crazy. The whole experience was probably one of the highlights of my life. My dad was there with me the whole time, and so.
Oh, he must be so proud of you.
Oh yes, yeah. It was amazing. He's such a sweetheart and very supportive. So it's great because he's like my best friend too. So. But after that, I was like, I can't believe that this is happening. Like, I just moved here 10 years ago and I'm doing stuff like this. And so now it's like, well, that I'm not stopping,
no.
And so it's just kind of motivating. But also I felt like, my dreams are coming true. I'm like,
like, I can do this.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Are you a success?
Am I a success? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Are you a badass?
I am. Like, I have no problem saying that. It's funny because sometimes people say you're a social butterfly. I'm like, what? Butterfly? More like ninja. Come on. I'm like working the room with. No way am I a social butterfly. I laugh at that because I'm like, no, I'm not fluttering around. I have purpose. So. Yeah, I think it's not like I never wanted to be seen as like cocky or conceited, but I'm definitely confident, and you have to be, I think, with what you're doing.
What do you think the next step is for you?
I know what I want. Like as far as like, I just want to continue to do what I'm doing for my members now, and in making our Teamster local like one of the more dominant locals within Los Angeles County, and within the country, and also being involved with the international. That's the goal. But like, and when you're involved with the international, you're dealing with like politics within the country. It's so interesting to me, and it's so important, and we have to like continue to battle some of the elected officials that we have in Congress and the Senate and within the country. And even right now, like, we're dealing with the presidential election, and it's like that to me, it's like it's such a new area of stuff that I have no idea about, but it's interesting, and I want to fight for everybody in the bigger arena, I guess. That's kind of where I'm hoping to go.
Yeah. When you get to the international level, are you dealing with different industries too?
Yes. I mean, we're a part of the motion picture film division, and there's tons of divisions. There's waste, there's UPS, there's freight, there's, sanitation. I already said that, waste, and school bus. Like, my dad's in the warehouse division, so it's huge. I mean, there's a lot of fights happening throughout the country, and we're lucky, for me as a Teamster, to be with the motion picture industry, because they're actually the problems that a lot of Teamsters and other unionists have throughout the country, we're not really having, because, it's like I said, it's highly unionized within this industry.
Mm-hmm. And it's vital.
It is.
Production's not happening without Teamsters.
Yeah, and productions always happen. Like, no matter what's happening with the economy, we're still making films, and that's been proven throughout the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So it's like when you have a union like UAW with the auto workers, like in Detroit, some of those unions were depleted because of the industry leaving the country. Mm-hmm. So those are like the issues that people are talking about with when you turn on your television or hear NPR or whatever, and you're hearing about like people being concerned about jobs leaving, and like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is the next trade deal that President Obama wants to implement, and it's a bipartisan thing, but a lot of politicians want to implement it because they think it's good for our economy. But this is the kind of stuff that unions are dealing with, because these are jobs being taken away. So I want to be a part of that kind of stuff too, and know what's going on in the country and what we can do as Americans to make our lives better and the world.
I think you will be. You're going to be all up in there.
Yeah.
Sidebar, how did it happen that the casting directors became part of 399?
Well, my boss, who is the principal officer of Teamsters Local 399, his name is Steve Dan. He actually, it took him 3 years, but he organized them collectively. Like the main issue was that they didn't have health care or a pension. And so, they were working as independent contractors since movies started being made. So they, that's what they wanted, and they weren't getting it from the studios. So they reached out to the Teamsters. And so, Steve, it took him 3 years, but he organized them. I think I want to say 2006 is when they first started organizing. I mean, it was a huge deal. He was showing me things in Variety, like, the AMPTP, which is the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, were actually putting ads in Variety against the organizing of the casting directors, which is just mind-boggling to me, because ultimately it's going to cost them more money, but we're talking about healthcare.
Yeah.
And so now they have it. They have healthcare, and they're happy. They're, I think everyone should have healthcare.
Yes. It shouldn't be, such a privilege. It should be
right. So he organized them in New York. So we have a joint collective bargaining agreement with New York as well. So they're all covered in LA and New York. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to women coming up?
I would tell them that, we always hear about this glass ceiling and breaking through it and doing it. To me, there is no difference. Like, if I see somebody working next to me and they're a man, I don't look at them as like, oh, they're going to get a job because they're a man. I have to work twice as hard. No, I'm working just as hard as everyone, because I'm going to do what I want to do, and no one's going to stop me. And like, that's the kind of mentality, is like, you have to just figure out how are you going to continue to progress as a person. And it's not about being male or female ever, to me. Like, there is no glass ceiling. That was broken a while ago. And Shonda Rhimes said something recently about what she does for television. It's like, oh, Shonda Rhimes did this great thing, like she broke through the glass ceiling. And she's saying there's no glass ceiling. I'm just normalizing television to what I see on a day-to-day basis, and that's basically what it is. It's like, no, I'm not getting this job because I'm a female. I'm getting this job because I'm qualified, and that's the just got to keep that drive and motivation and never stop, because we owe it to women before us, is that this is not, this fight is never over either. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the same thing with the labor movement. It's the same thing with the civil rights movement. Like, we have to just keep on going, and with love in mind as well. Like, I know it's hard to when you're dealing with things, but that's like, it's Martin Luther King did the same thing. It's like peace and love, and it sounds cheesy, but it's not. It's like, that's the way that we continue on.
And massive determination.
Massive determination, yes. And motivation, and taking care of yourself. Like, always take care of yourself, because if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to be able to do what you want to do or help anybody else? I mean, that's my whole philosophy on that, because it's really easy to get caught up in the job and forget about, like, eating correctly, being, exercising, meditating, reading a book, whatever it is that helps you, like, create that like sane and balanced atmosphere is extremely important.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a perspective on, once women start to have children and have families, how to work all that out while still being massively determined?
Yeah, this is like, for me as a single female, and that was never my, like, I do want children, maybe one, but like, it was never my my ultimate, like, that wasn't my priority. But like, anyone can do anything. Again, going back to Shonda Rhimes, who's extremely successful as a producer, writer, and creator. She has 3 children, and she adopted all of them, and she does not have a husband. That's, of course she has help, but that's the whole thing, is like, we'll always have help. We'll always have support from someone. or your family or whatever. I think that anything is possible. Like, everyone should do whatever they want to do. Like, to me, it's like, I know I'm going to have a kid one day. Like, I'm not worried about it. Like, I'm not worried about how am I going to continue, being this like labor organizer and being within that movement and fighting. Like, it's not a concern of mine, because every opportunity I've ever had, I've taken and I've ran with it, and that to me is like just another opportunity to fulfill your life. So the advice is do whatever you want to do, and make sure you have help, because you're going to need it. I mean, I would never, like, everyone in my life is strong, and I want them to be there with me, like, throughout those things, and I do the same for them. So
I could see you being like that woman who, I think she was in Italy, was putting her vote in Parliament. She had her baby in her sling, like on her, and she was on the floor of Parliament doing her, I don't know if it's called Parliament in Italy, but
right, yeah, just
doing her job.
Exactly. Like, I don't, like, who's because if someone says something about it, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I'm still doing it. Yeah. It's different in Southern California too, because people are single or have kids later, or get divorced or get married 3 times. No one really cares over here. I mean, where I'm from, it's like people got married young, had children, and I have friends like that too. But nowadays, it's 2016. It's like, if you're expecting any of us women to like follow in line with what was going on in the 1940s, you're just living on a different planet, and it's completely ridiculous. Like, everyone, that's the great thing, is no one really cares here. Yeah. At least for me. So
it's great.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
I just I think it's great what you're doing here, and I think that this is just a conversation that we need to have always, and never stop with the conversations, because people get uncomfortable when you start talking about certain things. Like, we started a women's caucus at our local. We have we have a black caucus too, and a Hispanic caucus, and it's like when that conversation isn't happening, and then when it happens again, it takes people by surprise, and they don't know how to react, because they don't know what you're really talking about, because they don't know what it's like to be in your shoes.
Right.
But like, if we continuously have these discussions of like, I am different and it's okay, and so are you, but this is why I'm different, and this is how I feel about like the way I'm treated in certain instances. Like, I don't like being treated like I'm lower than anybody else because I have a vagina. Like, that, it makes no difference. We're all one race.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all. And like, then to have this discussion, not to go off in the weeds, but about like Planned Parenthood and all that stuff. Like, we had those discussions in the 60s and 70s, and we squashed it. But then it was like, we thought we squashed it, but apparently everyone else,
we thought it was over.
Right. But now it's like this new discussion again. But it's like, if we just continually talk about this kind of stuff, I think like it won't be so uncomfortable for those people that are not the minority, they're the majority. And so that they can really understand, where we're coming from and what's going on in the world. Because this isn't just here in the motion picture industry, this is worldwide.
It feels like we're at a tipping point, to me, of the conversations of differences and diversity and...
Yeah, almost like rock bottom.
Tipping point, rock bottom.
Yeah, it's not rock bottom, because we have, like, I'm joking, we have progressed, like, very much since the 60s. But then again, it's like, people are still ridiculous. And there always will be, those ignorant individuals that just don't have much of an education. And I feel bad for them for that. But, like, this is something that is still... we still need to talk about. It has
got to change.
It has got to, because I'm like, the numbers have shown that it has got to change. It is not just like how we're feeling, it's the numbers. I mean, They've come out with studies with obviously the directors, and we're in a crisis is what's happening.
Yeah.
And so there's no other way but to change.
Yeah. I love that now there's data, and it's not just about our feelings.
Right.
It's not about being nice to girls.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's not going to get you anywhere.
No. Now it's science.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. You've been listening to The Other 50%. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Lindsay Dougherty for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jonathan Lucas for editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, and on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features and bios of our guests. You especially want to check it out today because you're going to want to see Lindsay's tattoos. I'm just saying. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Well, technically you had me.
Oh, it's okay.